When we talk about climate change, lots of people automatically think about global warming. And basically when we're talking about that, global warming is a form of climate change, and global warming is what we're seeing happening at the moment. And when we talk about climate change, it's important to bear in mind that we're talking about sort of really long-term effects on climate. So we're talking about on the scale of sort of decades, sort of every 30 years. So we're looking at sort of long-term trends, because I think often when people think of climate change, they think about sort of weather. And when we talk about weather, we're talking about changes in climate on a day-to-day basis, days, months, weeks. And climate change is a long-term trend. So when we talk about climate change, we can talk about cooling and warming, and both have happened in the past. But at the moment, sort of what's currently happening is global warming. So temperatures are rising. And another thing that's been observed, which is of great importance to this region, to the Caribbean region, is an increase in intensity in hurricanes and tropical storms.
I think it's important to make the distinction between what is technically known as mitigation in the climate change world and adaptation. And they're both areas in which we can take steps to reduce the impacts of climate change. Mitigation is really about steps that we can take to reduce our contribution to greenhouse gas emissions as a country and as individuals. Adaptation, on the other hand, refers to steps that we can take to reduce our vulnerability to the impacts of climate change. So dealing specifically with mitigation, one of the ways that we can best deal with mitigation is obviously to address our energy issues. Either by introducing energy efficiency measures individually or as a country, and also to reduce our reliance on carbon-based sources of fuel, what is referred to as fossil fuels, and increasing our uptake of renewable energies, for example, wind and solar. So what we've been promoting at the Department of Environment, for example, is that the government adopt a national energy policy that would do exactly that, that would set the framework for us to, within the next 5 or 10 years, reduce our reliance on fossil fuels as our primary fuel source for our energy production, and incorporate in the sort of basket of our energy source more renewable energies, such as wind and solar.
At the moment, the National Climate Change Strategy is at the stage of an issues paper. The department is finalizing the issues paper along with the other members of the National Climate Change Committee, and we hope to finalize that within the next month or so. After that, the issues paper we will condense into a more user-friendly, less technical document called a green paper, which we will put out to the public.
Adaptation is really about reducing our vulnerability to the predicted impacts of climate change. And there are things that we can do as a country to help reduce our vulnerability to climate change by, for example, dealing with our planning regulations, our physical planning regulations, setbacks for coastal buildings, etc., the way that we build in the coastal zone, ensuring that we take climate change or some of the predicted impacts like sea level rise into account. We can also obviously deal with our exposure to climate events like hurricanes, which are predicted to be more intense. But also, basically, I think that the message about adaptation is that one of the ways that we can best adapt to climate change, really, as a government, as a country, is to ensure that we take action to address current issues. For example, things like the loss of biodiversity. It's very important that we protect our mangrove ecosystems, that we protect our ecosystems generally. Biodiverse systems are more resilient to natural events like hurricanes and will help us deal with future climate scenarios much, much better. There are many, many things that individuals can do, and the DOE has lots of information on that on our website. So you can go and find out how you can actually personally take steps to reduce your vulnerability to climate change, as well as to help with the mitigation aspect of climate change. The DOE's website is www.doe.ky. Well, I think the important message about the future and climate change is that climate change is happening now, and it will continue to happen. If we wait to take steps to adapt to climate change, those steps will cost us much more than if we were to integrate those steps into our decision making and our national planning processes now.